Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up later in the show, we'll see a short film from Greg Carlson. But first, Matt O'Lean interviews the star of that film.
And I'm here with my guest, Dean Syme. Dean, welcome to Prairie Pulse.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
First off, tell folks a bit about yourself, your background, where you're from originally, and then we'll get into record collecting.
Okay. Well, I grew up in South Dakota in a very small town of 90 people. So Fargo's a little different than that. Graduated high school in the late 80s, moved to Wahpeton, fell in love, and moved to Fargo. So now we're here.
You're here to talk about record collecting and vinyl, which is really your wheelhouse, and we'll get to that. But tell us about your collection, how you got into vinyl collecting, and how that works.
Well, I loved music ever since I was young, and I think it was like 5th or 6th grade, that's all I asked for Christmas was records. And ever since then, I've collected records. I still get records for Christmas from people. When I travel, I buy records. So I never stopped buying records. I mean, all the way through when even CDs got really big. I still bought CDs, but I've always bought records. So I've always kept collecting. And over the years, I just never got rid of many. So they've ended up being a large part of my house.
Yes,
I've joked that I bought a bigger house, I had more room for records.
Yeah. I know you got a huge collection. You brought some with today, but one particular we've got up here. What's this one we're looking at?
Well, it's the Pine Valley Cosmonauts, which is a group of Chicago musicians and some musicians from England, mostly from the group called the Mekons, with guest vocalists, and they do a bunch of Bob Wills covers. It's an interesting record because it was a limited edition of 1,000, and that's number like 218. So it's, one of 1,000 that exist in the world. So that's one of the things I think is interesting when you buy a record is if you know it's limited, this one's hand numbered. So someone actually sat down with a pen and wrote the number on the back versus some that are printed as a limited edition. So.
Right. And why are some records just not a lot of, they don't get a lot of prints to them?
Well, some of it is manufactured collectability. Someone's going to say, I want to sell this record for more money. And I'm going to say make a 500, and then people are going to think it's cool. Or they make 500 in black and 500 in white and 500 in purple or something. And that kind of manufactures limitations. This one, I believe they only thought they could sell 900, so they made 1,000, numbered them. And this came out before the vinyl resurgence, really. That record's probably 10 or 12 years old, maybe even more than that. So it was kind of before records became super cool. So nowadays, if they're going to press a record, they're going to probably press more than 1,000. But back in the 90s, they were only printing a few usually. Yeah.
So as a serious collector, what are you looking for, and how do you keep track of something you might want to buy or own?
Well, I use an online website. It's called Discogs. Lets me track what I own, what I collect. I also have a mental list of all times, but a lot of it's for me is a gut. I mean, I'll go into a store when I travel, I'll just flip through records, and if I see something I don't recognize, that kind of triggers me to go, oh, what's this? And then just by knowing different labels, different regions of the country, different regions of the world, you kind of get a feel for what might be interesting. And I buy a lot of stuff on Herd just to find out what it is.
Now, in 2010, you started something called the Fargo Record Fair, correct?
That is correct.
What is it? When is it? Tell me about it.
Typically, the Fargo Record Fair is always in late October. That's just when it works for my life. It's basically like a big rummage sale. I've round up collectors from the Midwest, and they basically rent a table from me, and we have a venue. It's been in 5 or 6 different spots around town over the last 10 years. And we just have a big room filled with records, and then we let people come in and they shop through them, and it's like having 30 or 40 mini stores available for you to dig through. And every collector has a slightly different selection of what they might have collected over the years, so you can find some unusual things, interesting things all the time.
So people come from out of town, out of state to bring their collections in to the fair. That's how it works?
We've had a guy from Nebraska. We've had a guy from Montana a few times. Mostly, North Dakota, Minnesota. A couple guys from South Dakota in the past. That's what I'd like to see it get bigger, but, you can only fill the market so much. Yeah.
How many people typically show up, and do you have volunteers to help you?
We have a few volunteers that help me. Lori, who's my wife, helps me. My son helps me. A couple of the other vendors who are good friends help me. But more or less, I kind of organize and put it together myself, and then the day of, I get some help to help round it up. We get roughly 300 to 400 people typically show up to shop. We've had a hard time getting an exact number. It gets to be a pretty busy day, and we've tried the little clicker thing and just trying to tally the money, but it all gets mixed up between what I'm selling for records, what we're selling for vendors, and giving change to people. So it's hard to get an exact that we had 319 people. It's roughly 300 or 400. So
Does pricing get interesting? Is there negotiations that go on?
oh, there's always negotiations. Lori thinks I negotiate too much. But you pick a price you think your record's worth, and if someone offers you less than that, and you're willing to take it, great. I mean, if they buy 3 or 4 or 5 things, that's even better. But yeah, pricing's always interesting because people will say, well, I saw this on the internet for $5, and you're trying to get 10. Or someone might say, oh, I saw this on the internet for $50, and they want to try to sell it for $50. So pricing's always an interesting conundrum.
So why has vinyl made this comeback? And I mean, music is your wheelhouse, movies are mine, I guess. I can't quite pinpoint the year when vinyl came back, but you see stores all over the place now. And it never really left for you, right? But
Yeah.
what's part of this resurgence?
Yeah, it never really left for me. And I worked in a music store for most of my 20s. And I always say this is the third wave of vinyl. Like growing up in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, that was the main time for vinyl. CDs kind of tried to knock off vinyl for a while, but kind of in the mid-90s, there's a little bump where vinyl started getting a little more popular. And that's kind of where I was like, oh, I should, play my records more. I should buy more records. And you started seeing a few more artists releasing their music on vinyl. But Record Store Day was a big one. And Record Store Day is 11 years old, I think. So around 11 years ago, they kind of said, a bunch of independent record stores got together and said, we're going to try to find a way to have a special day for record stores. And they talked some artists and labels into releasing special releases. And that's helped fuel it, just because it made people go, oh, here's a special thing. And it was some big artists. I mean, Pink Floyd's released special Record Store Day releases. I mean, that's a band everyone's going to know. So, fans go, oh, wow, that's something cool I can go out and get. So I think that's helped a lot. But overall, vinyl, it's just fun to listen to. It's fun to handle. It's not just pushing a button on your phone. It's not just dropping a silver disc in a CD player. You got to pick it up. You got to turn it over. You got to handle the needle. It's fun.
So that's probably the reason. And when CDs came out, we were told these are going to sound better. What is the difference in sound between CD and vinyl? And do you think vinyl sounds better? There's just something to it, isn't there?
I do believe vinyl sounds better, but it always comes with the caveat that it can sound better. There's recordings that just don't sound good at all. There's recordings that were set up to be digital. There's recordings that were set up to be analog. But with records, it just seems like it's a little warmer. It's a little easier to listen to. I always think if you put on a CD and digital music, it's fatiguing. When you put on vinyl, it just seems to relax you, let you be. I don't know. I think there's a pacing there too. It seems like things aren't as rushed when you're listening to records. It's just, maybe it's because you're dedicating your time to it,
right,
and it's letting you be there. But yeah, sound's a big part of it.
Yeah. So. What are some other rare records you have in your collection?
One of the big ones I always talk about is Big Star, and they're a band from basically the early 70s, late 60s, and they just had a series of bad luck where the distribution didn't work. The label went out of business. All these things kind of fell apart for them. But, when people hear them now, they're always like, wow, why wasn't that band huge? And they should have been, because almost everyone that hears them goes, that's a great band. And
like
I've got
Rodriguez should have been big, shouldn't he?
That's another one, exactly. And it took that film about him
did,
to make everyone go, oh, wow. And actually the people in South Africa kept his music going.
Yeah.
But there's those situations those rare artists that for some reason just didn't click. And some of it's bad luck, some of it's bad marketing, some of it's just bad timing. So I think those things, I'm always interested in the slightly off left of center things that are most interesting to me.
How many records do you have in your collection?
I hate to admit it. It varies because I buy some, I sell some. Roughly 5,000, I suppose.
How's that gone over with your family? Do you have a separate room?
I do have a separate room. I'm trying to get it down to one separate room. It's kind of 2 rooms right now. So I've got a main music room, which I call the main collection or the archive, and then I've got the deeper collection of stuff that I'm still kind of evaluating, deciding if it's keepers or sellers or things like that. So,
What is a collectible? Who collects out there, and what are they looking for?
collectability is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, there's someone to collect everything. My daughter gave me a book of a collectible, different record collectors, and there's a guy that collects just Sesame Street records. There's a guy that I saw an article on the internet about him that collects just Beatles White Albums, because every cover is different.
Yes.
Over the last whatever number of years. Age and water damage and just shelf wear has caused them all to look slightly different. So there's a collector for anything. A lot of people like to collect colored vinyl. You know, they'll have a pink or a purple or a splattered color. They like that. You know, variants where there's a mistake. Like I bought a Green Day record when it came out, Green Day Dookie. They originally put a Sesame Street character, Ernie, on the back. Well, they got in trouble for that, so the later pressings, they took Ernie off the back. So things like that are interesting, and there's collectors for almost everything.
Yeah, I mean that Beatles record, you mentioned the White Album, the one where they have the babies on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
That's a real famous one, isn't it?
Exactly,
That never-
yeah. It's called the Butcher cover,
Yeah.
because originally it was not a very nice looking cover, and then they tried to put a sticker over it to cover it up, and that's when people covet a lot,
Yeah.
the Beatles one. So.
What's the process of cleaning and repairing records, Dean?
Well, number one thing I always tell people when it comes to records of cleaning them is don't get them dirty in the first place, which would be, you know, make sure you put them back in the sleeves, put them on the shelves, keep them in good shape like that. And when I play a record, I always use a static free brush, carbon fiber brush to brush the dirt off. If they are dirty, there's multiple ways to do it. I've invested in a vacuum cleaning machine that you put a cleaning solution down, kind of rub it into the record, and then it vacuums it off. There's kind of homebrew versions of that. A friend of mine uses a shop vac in his own main wand, and he does that same thing. Vacuuming it out's the best. There's just wet solutions in general where you can use a kind of a sponge type thing and a pad to rub it off and basically do all the work yourself. But ultimately, if it's a really dirty record, it's going to have some kind of moisture given to it to get it off.
Okay. And how are records graded?
Record grading is kind of like grading almost everything else. Typically, it starts, the best record possible is mint, and it goes all the way down to poor. And I'm always a believer that there's really no such thing as a mint record. Once you open that record out and you pull it out of the sleeve and you play it, in my mind, that's a near mint record. You know, a mint record looks perfect. It's probably never been played. You can't tell anything's ever happened to it. And it's hard to even buy a new record that looks like that. But as it goes down, like every mark, you know, any mark on the record's gonna degrade it a little bit. The big thing is once it starts to get to the point where it skips or you can hear static and noise on it, that makes it down to a good record at best.
What's the most you've ever paid for a record?
A single record or like a box set?
Or either one.
I'm usually cheap when it comes to actually buying records. I did buy the Johnny Cash American box set, which I think is six LPs, and I paid like $120 for that. A single record, I think I paid like $50 for one. So I'm not, you can pay, like I brought one today that we're not going to show, but it was a handmade one that sells online for like $400 or $500. I bought it for $20 when it was brand new, but now it's selling for $400 or $500 online.
Who are some of your favorite singer-songwriters over the years, bands, musicians?
Well, singer-songwriter is a good way because I like a lot of singer-songwriters. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Richman, who's not well known. You probably know him from Something About Mary, the movie. He's the kind of the troubadour throughout the movies. He's one of my big favorites forever. I like Lou Reed. Lou Reed's been a big favorite. There's really almost too many to name. Big Star we talked about already. They're a big favorite.
So with something like Big Star, how many copies were made of that album? Not
I
many?
don't know
And never
exactly how
sold?
many were made. I've never seen a document that said this was made. It's been repressed multiple times, so the pressing is the most important part. So I've got one that's the original pressing that was sent out to a radio station, so it's got like a promo paperwork with it and stuff like that. And it's highly collectible, but mine's in really bad shape. Someone at the radio station cleaned it with something they shouldn't have cleaned it with. And the only reason I keep it is because it is a very rare record. But I've got 3 other pressings of it from different times that I play to listen to.
Can you talk about the comeback a lot of record stores have made,
Yeah.
just especially with vinyl. And is there a lot of overhead getting something started like that? You worked in record stores, of course.
I've worked in record stores. The bread and butter for record stores like that is really the used records. Because new records, they don't give you a lot of margin on them. There's not a lot of profit to be made on a new record. So it's the day-to-day selling a lot of copies of, common records that everybody wants to listen to, the classic rock records that, the kid who's 15 and discovered records goes, I want a bunch of Rolling Stones or Beatles records. And if they can, get a collection and sell them, I mean, that's where they're going to be able to keep their money rolling is through the used records.
Yeah.
But it's like any business. You gotta pay the employees, you gotta pay the rent, gotta pay the electricity, and somehow keep the doors open.
What are some stores around the state you would recommend to people to go and try to rummage around? Not to pick ones, but
Well, the thing is Fargo's got actually a pretty good music scene right now as far as stores go. I mean, music scene in general, but I mean, Mother's has been around since I think the 70s. And so they've been around. They've got a reputation. A lot of people really like Mother's records. Orange Records now has been here for 10 or 12 years. I think he started just a year or two before Record Store Day started. So he kind of picked the right time to open. And I think Vinyl Giant's kind of the new game in town, but he's been around 5-6 years already too. And they're all interesting stores. They all have their own.
But I assume Bismarck, Grand Forks, some of the bigger stores would have some.
Bismarck, Grand Forks has Ojada, which is kind of a store I like because they kind of carry some of the different oddball stuff. They've got a little restaurant in there. They do comic books, so it's a mixture. They've got Budget, and I think there's a Budget in Bismarck. No, there's a Budget in Grand Forks, and Minot, I think, still has a Budget. And Budgets are nice stores too, and they've been around for a long, long time. So I think Bismarck has a little one called Rhythm Cafe. And that gentleman's, I've met him a couple times, and I bought a couple things from him too.
Almost out of time. If people want more information about where to find records and also more about the Fargo Record Fair, where can they go? You got a Facebook page?
Yeah,
I know for
easiest
that,
thing
yeah.
is the Facebook page. Is just go to Fargo Record Fair on Facebook, and then I'm pretty good about responding to messages on there, and I try to post things on there occasionally. I've been a little lazy now since October. I get really busy going up to the record fair, and then after that I kind of take a break. So.
And again, Discogs is a website you kind of
Discogs
trust?
is a website I trust. The thing about them is they'll show you what the history of the record sold for. Or if you go to some of the other big ones like eBay and stuff, is they show you what it's selling for now. Well, that doesn't really prove anything to what people actually want for something.
Thanks, Dean, for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Stay tuned for more.
And now we're going to see a short film directed by Concordia College film professor Greg Carlson.
If you give me a box with 10 records I know and 5 records I don't know, even if they're the 10 most favorite records I ever had, I'm going to those 5 I don't know first. There's certain collectors I think that are completists, and they love a certain artist and they want everything they can get by that artist. And for me, it always went back to wanting to know that next thing. I joke with people that I'm looking for nothing and everything at the same time. My name is Dean Syme, and I'm a record collector. I like the interaction, kind of committing to having to listen. You've got 20 minutes on a side of a record roughly, and you've got to pay attention to it. I've compared to driving a stick shift car a lot of the times where you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You can't just put it on and ignore it. So you've got to pick up the needle, you've got to set it on the record, you've got to listen to it and pay attention, know when it gets to the end to take it off. And I like flipping over the record. I like handling the records. That's just something I miss when I've used digital music. You miss that interaction with the music. So here's a record I picked up a few months ago, and I bought it originally because of the artwork. I like how the family doesn't look very happy, and it says, "Don't settle for uptight stereo." And you open it up, and it's got this great pop-up, and it shows the family hanging out at night, listening to music. They've got records out, and then as a bonus, the record was even orange.
My name is Lori West, and I am a librarian. One night I was at the library and I was just getting into my car and he came out of the library. He had like a mullet. But he was really cute, and he had a jean jacket he wore, and there was a Suburbs patch on it, which I zeroed in on right away.
She saw the patch on my jacket, and we both kind of liked the same band a little bit.
And I walked up to him and I said, I want to know your name, which is totally uncharacteristic for me.
She was the first girl I had met that had similar interest in music and cared about music the way I do. That was a big connection that I felt with her anyway, was, wow, here's a girl that likes music. But I know when we did move in together, I remember kind of her bringing her records in and me bringing my records in. And there were a few that we overlapped on. There's a band called We've Got a Fuzzbox and We're Going to Use It. We both had a copy of that. I had the import, she had the domestic.
My name is Oliver Syme. I'm a senior at Fargo North High School in Fargo, North Dakota.
My name is Quincy Syme, and I'm a junior at Fargo North High School in Fargo, North Dakota.
I remember always seeing all the records in the basement and all the CDs and 8-tracks and whatnot, and always thinking it was normal that someone had this much music. The basement was always like the record storage area. It's kind of like one of the main purposes of the basement, I always thought.
On one of my birthdays, when I had a bunch of friends over and his like ginormous speakers got delivered, and all my friends were super excited that the speakers were taller than them. Usually he like falls asleep or something like late at night when we're down here, but it doesn't bother us. I think he's done a good job of not affecting our decisions on music.
They need to be able to develop their own taste. What means something to them and what resonates with them as people, rather than looking at somebody else's generation for their music. I'm a very moody music listener. I mean, I've got thousands of records in my house and thousands of pieces of music in my house. And I'll spend a whole morning not listening to anything, looking for the right record to play at that moment. The one that always gets mentioned is Big Star, and a friend of mine jokes that I've never heard you talk to anybody about music without bringing up Big Star. I love the first couple Cars records, and every time I listen to them, it takes me right back to being 15, 16 years old. This is an album by a band called the Jody Grind. The first Lloyd Cole and the Commotions record which came out in '84. So you're looking at going on 30 plus years of that record probably being played in my house on almost a monthly basis. Bands like NRBQ and the Kinks, Dr. Feelgood. How did I miss this band for 30 years? I love Conway Twitty, which freaks people out. John Prine wrote the song, Will Oldham did a version of it, but they do In Spite of Ourselves. This is a double 10-inch of cover songs, but this one's got like Dark Into the Street on it, Fortunate Son. I actually compare to some of the old blues artists. She might not be a superstar right now, but she's gonna be remembered for a very long time. It's a lot of love songs, it's great pop music. They were from the Pacific Northwest before anybody else was, it seems like. Oh, I can't forget about this one. This is much more traditional country sounding than a lot of it. The Modern Lovers' first album, I've said before, it's like the perfect rock and roll record. A friend of mine talked me into going to New York to visit him, and one of his big pushes for me was the WFMU Record Fair. He goes, you gotta come see this thing, it's crazy. I just thought it was great. It was a full day of just shopping for records, and I'm like, I should do something like that in Fargo. So when I got back, I started kind of contacting a few of the people I knew that had music collections. I was convinced there was going to be 3 vendors and 2 shoppers on the first year, but it turned out to be a lot bigger than that. And here 6 years later, 40 tables of vendors selling stuff and hundreds of people showing up to look through them. It was never really about the guy that had a store, the guys that were selling their records on eBay. It was really about the guy that had a lot of records in college and now they're taking up room in his basement. And how do you move them on to other people? How do you get the kids? If they discover Built to Spill and they like records, well, if you've got a guy that's 45 and has a Built to Spill record and doesn't use it, maybe a kid that's 20 should have that record and use it. You know, I'm a music promoter in that sense. Whether I worked in the record store, I did radio, I did a couple zines, and now I'm doing the record fair. And it's always about, I want people to enjoy the music. If I didn't really sell a record all day, I'd be fine.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse this week. And as always, thanks for watching.
Funded by the members of Prairie Public.